Today we're going to talk about promising ship dates and how important they are and how to prepare for them in worst case scenarios. So here's a question you might want to ask yourself. How important is it to meet the expectations of a promised ship date? Well, like most people, I believe the answer is it depends. Customer expectations have gone way up, and so has the importance of hitting promised ship dates to a larger group of people. Years ago, distributors' primary concern was food mass club or big box retailers, but probably need to now include next day shipping online orders in that group. Not meeting your promise dates can be really bad. If you take a look at sending product with promise dates off to distributors like Target, Walmart, Amazon, there are serious penalties if you don't get your product there in a timely fashion. So the business was able to focus in on specific pick orders and the importance of allocating product to those. Of course, the other issue is shorting. You don't want to short orders, which in some ways also means you can't meet that promise to ship just because you have outage in your inventory. Both are problems in themselves, but can you imagine now how hard it would be to not only allocate and worry about focusing on just a small subset of your customers, but now expanding that to tripling and quadrupling your number of customers that you have to meet promised ship dates? The challenge is certainly huge. Now, of course, there's all kinds of techniques you can use to avoid even providing a promise to ship date, like presenting information on the e-commerce user interface or website that indicates when they can expect to receive the shipment. But there's other issues you have to consider as well. I remember a story many years ago where a distributor was hiring new forklift drivers, and the guy on his first job took out a forklift and lifted up a huge amount of racking and ended up destroying pallets of product. These are the kind of products that were required to be used to fulfill orders right then and there. Not much you can do about that other than try to react as quickly as possible, which is what I would consider that worst case scenario. As you answer for yourself what steps you're willing to take to address those worst case scenarios, you have to think about how much cost you're willing to put into a problem, and it could even mean you're not making any money on this order. Ultimately, in today's world, keeping a customer happy seems to have more importance in some cases than actually making money on each order, as crazy as that sounds. This kind of reminds me of the old saying that the best offense is a good defense. In other words, certainly you'd love to be able to prevent this from ever happening in the first place, and there are certain activities you could do and strategies to minimize those scenarios, like keeping more inventory in stock. But unfortunately, that can bear expenses that are just not feasible. Another proactive measure you can take is to make sure that you're putting accurate inventory information right on the website when people are ordering. Oftentimes, people won't be as upset if they see that you're out of stock, as opposed to if you try to tell them you can ship it, but then you can't. This is also where demand planning and forecasting solutions comes into play to avoid this in the first place. There's lots of options like ERP-based solutions that can plug right in and give you an idea of what to expect for demand planning. Also, there are tools right in a WMS system that can also benefit you to plan out when you expect to run out of stock based on forecasts and incoming purchase orders and outgoing sales orders, and give you an end-of-day view into what to expect. Another area where you have to live up to ship dates as a supplier is really retail stores. When an online order is created and somebody drives to a retail store to pick up their order and only to determine that there was product that was out of stock and therefore they couldn't fulfill on that promised ship date, that's another huge problem that only real good inventory visibility can bring a solution to, which is really the core issue in some of the cases around not being able to hit promise dates. For large retail stores, oftentimes one of the solutions to dealing with that worst case scenario is being able to quickly, dynamically allocate picks and transfers to other retail facilities using technology. Introducing intelligent transfers is definitely an approach that can be very useful in large retail chains. The last category of dealing with this area of problems that I'd like to address is dealing with vendor and supply shortages, especially right now in this year 2020, where we're dealing with COVID and the lack of having predictable supply is a real challenge that many people are facing right now. And in this scenario, being able to have the ability to dynamically pull product and purchasing from other vendors other than your standard go-to providers is another key to allowing you to minimize those shortages. One simple but important aspect of being able to be ready to do such a thing is to be able to have multiple barcodes that represent your internal items. That way, when a new vendor who sends in new SKUs hits the dock, you're able to continue to scan and use those products throughout your fulfillment and receiving and so on. The last area I want to address when it comes to strategy to dealing with hitting those promise dates is to have dynamic reallocation of orders that have already been picked and staged. This is a technique that customers will use when they have a very important, critical delivery that needs to be sent out immediately, but yet they are missing certain items. These customers are able to do a dynamic search against orders that are in the staging areas that can afford to delay the availability of that product until either later in the day or later in the week. But that requires a system with accurate inventory, but also accurate insight into forecasting of sales orders and purchase orders, for an example. That technique is very interesting in the fact that it can be a lifesaver for those companies dealing with these situations. Every customer order is important, but by using dynamic inventory allocation to look at shipments up until the point they're ready to go out the door, as well as intelligently managing those stock levels based on data analytics and preparing for new barcode associations can all be important. And best of all, investing in accurate inventory in real time for both your optimization internally, but also the customer wanting to know if you have something in stock and when it will really ship. Hopefully, techniques like this can help you sleep well, knowing that your customers got their order on time.
Thanks for listening. To access more resources like this, including blogs, articles, webinars, and more, visit the WithoutWire content portal at withoutwire.com.
WithoutWire is a cloud-based inventory management service that brings science to barcode scanning for field techs, manufacturers, or warehouse pickers. Within minutes, you can set up your own personalized environment. With our embedded Microsoft Power BI and SQL reporting services, you'll get live views of your activity from nearly any device and form factor including iOS or Android-based smartphones, tablets, and rugged purpose-built scanning devices. WithoutWire. Inventory management solutions without equal.